But now we could kind of move into sort of what you and I have been talking about for a couple weeks now, which is like when we were talking about potential ideas into sort of topics that aren't really discussed. You and I, obviously, we laid it out that we're both very big into sort of like the what ifs and like what could have beens. You know, approached this topic. Actually, you came up with it. Was making the challengers team on the ruins actually competitive. And I think anybody with a set of eyes who watched that season will know that it became very apparent from the start that the challengers team on the ruins was very outmatched. I think they only might have won like one daily challenge or something like that. It was like a complete landslide. I mean, you know, if you look at the ruins, it was essentially just a navigation system to kind of let the Kenny, Johanna, West storyline play out, essentially, and it was just like a complete hot mess. I would say, like, honestly, the first 5 episodes, like when West was still there, was like, from a drama standpoint, that was definitely very entertaining, but like competitively speaking, there was nothing really to hang your hat on. So pretty much right now, we each collectively, anonymously, basically assembled our own challengers teams, like both guys and girls, of like what we would have done. We also tried to use some logic behind it. So like if, you know, certain people, like let's just say like were like completely just banned or something like that back then, like we wouldn't use them, but we kept it semi-realistic and tried to like do what we felt would have made it best. So you know, the floor is yours if you would like to go first, or I could go first if you'd prefer. Either or works.
Yeah, so I have a book. I actually wrote these things down, so I'm like, Laurel, Michaela, whoever you want to be on the show. I have a book.
Johnny Bananas on Vendettas.
Yeah.
Well, that's actually technically post notes, but yeah.
Yeah. But anyways, I initially kind of thought on the challengers team, who would I keep? Because there's a lot of, you know, I don't know what they thought they were doing, bringing like Casey and Siobhan on the team. I mean, poor Siobhan, she had to be ushered away for her implant, but I didn't think, like, no one thought they were going to win.
You know what I think they thought, though? I think they thought, and again, I'm not trying to give them credit for this decision, but I think that they thought by putting Siobhan on the same team as Diem, from what happened the prior season, they could have sparked the storyline there. But I feel like by not having CT there, it's like, what's the point? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's much easier for girls just one-on-one to kind of talk out their differences and sort of like sort that through. But if you involve the guy in the situation, you have the potential to maybe get more funky with it. But like, I don't know. I think that's why they casted Siobhan. But yeah.
I mean, I couldn't tell you, but so on the female side, the names that I kept around were Kellyanne. I think there was a lot of potential with her after the island. Granted, we didn't see much on the island, but she kind of had a lot of gusto behind her name. I kept Kimberly after the Duel 2. She kind of proved that she has a little bit more muscle than people thought and was a bigger threat. And I kept Sarah. Granted, I only kept her because I know she did well and like really demonstrated a lot of heart in the game on the Ruins. If we're being honest, after watching like the Real World Brooklyn, no one really thought Sarah was going to be a great competitor. And I wouldn't necessarily call her elite, but she's not bad. You can do way worse than Sarah. But I did keep her on the team. So for the females, those are the only 3. Maybe again, I'm kind of using information that we have. I probably would have kept DM, but it was so blatantly clear that she just didn't really want to be there. I mean, she openly says on every other season that eliminations were her worst point, but she volunteers to go in the first one. And Tanya is like, yeah, I want to take out DM. Like that, I just want to do that. clearly she didn't want to be there.
So you think she just did that for the appearance? I heard that rumor actually. Now that you bring this to my attention, I could have sworn I saw that like she like I don't know if she necessarily threw it to Tanya, but like was like sort of indifferent to if she would have lost, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't think that I don't think she was there for. I think she was there for the appearance fee, which is fine. You know, you get your wild cards like that, but just with that in mind, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But with that in mind, I did kind of in our fantasy cash chop her.
Yeah. So okay. Yeah.
The people that I replaced, one person, and this is kind of a controversial pick, especially with my assessment of the All Stars 5 cast. But I did put Anissa on the cast because I do think after the Duel 2 especially, she is someone who puts a little bit of fear in the females in the sense that she is not someone you want to face in elimination. Yeah. The Duel 2 was probably her strongest showing in eliminations, and I thought that she would be kind of a little bit of an intimidation factor that was lacking on the female side for the champions. I also Brianna I was on the fence with because it was her first season. She could have done a lot. She kind of took a swing and missed. I don't know if that makes her a bad pick. The only bad thing was they could have sent Casey in when Brianna went in because that was the one time that the challengers won, and they were like, "Nah, we're going to send Bri in." So I proposed if we're going to get rid of Brianna, either bringing back Brittany from the Duel 2, or if we're going to do like a deep cut, someone that had a lot of potential we never really saw, would be Irulan. I don't know how much you know, but around that time, they did the Real World Homecoming, or not Homecoming, Reunited in Las Vegas, and that kind of sparked a little bit of interest from the original Vegas cast, which is why we saw Frank on the Gauntlet 2 or Gauntlet 3, allegedly. Yeah. So maybe she could have done it. Maybe she would have done it. I would have been interested.
Wow, that's actually a good one.
Yeah. I found it was a little bit harder to cast the female side. Mm-hmm. There weren't a whole lot of people that weren't champions that had a lot of potential.
Yeah.
Instead of Casey, I put Ruthie. I do think that one thing was kind of lacking from the challenger side was that there weren't a lot of challengers that were like, especially for the women, fighting to be champions. Mm-hmm. Like I said, what was Siobhan going to do? Like Casey was playing the game with Kenny and Evan. Like she wasn't. She might have been there to get like a little bit of money, but she wasn't there for the title. Ruthie wants to play. She wants to win. The Duel 2 wasn't her best showing, but she did have that moment on like I think it was called All Wound Up, the rope one, where she kind of dominated it.
Yeah.
And the last person, I already said that I was going to replace Siobhan. I replaced her. And I was thinking either Svetlana, but we all know she's not going to get on that plane.
Or she's turning back around.
Yeah, she might get to the airport, but she's not going to make it. So kind of another deeper cut. I said Shonda from Fresh Meat 1. Had a lot of potential, but we only saw her one time.
Yeah, that's a good one, actually. Good shout. Okay, so I'll do my girls first, and then we'll bounce back to you for your guys, and then I'll finish with the guys. So actually for my girls, against my better judgment, I did actually leave Diem on, despite what you just said, because I didn't take that into account before. I would probably still leave her on because it's like revisionist history, so it's just kind of like a catch-22.
Don't get me wrong, I like Diem. I mean, rest her soul, she was amazing on the show. And I think that she's someone that would have been really, especially that final, she probably would have been good because she's fast, she can run. And I mean, she's not going to quit. So,
Yeah.
except for like that time that I speculate she quit in the first elimination. Other than that, she's not going to quit.
Yeah. So obviously left Kellyanne. She basically was one of, in my opinion, the stars of this show in terms of like main characters. And then I leave Sarah because many people refer to her as rookie of the year is a term that gets thrown around a lot. She was kind of everybody's rookie of the year, quote unquote, for this season. She went into what did she win? Two eliminations. I believe it was. Yeah, she beat Johanna and then she beat Katie. Okay, so yeah. And then Kimberly, obviously you left as well. Kimberly had a small sample size on the Duel 2, but like she showed something to me that warranted her to get cast on this in real life. And then obviously, as we know, she beat Ibis in an elimination, and then she had that epic one with Susie, which I mean, her and Susie kind of like, in a sense, I would refer to that as like the forgotten pole wrestle. You know what I mean? Like, that's the great one that everybody seems to kind of sweep under the rug, kind of because both of them left the show after that, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, she, to her credit, Kimberly, she was there to play.
Yeah.
I mean, she was there for a short time, but it was a good time when we had her.
And the reason why she becomes pivotal in this role is because this next person who I'm replacing Casey with, she was involved in a storyline with Kimberly and, my all-time favorite cast member ever in the previous season, Dunbar.
Paula
Walnuts. She hadn't won at this point, and she was an iconic cast member, and she always had this, like, everything that she did, you had to follow it. Like everything she was doing on screen was of entertainment and of interest. And I feel like obviously replacing her with Casey is like a big upgrade. Because, I mean, Casey, she obviously at that point in time didn't have the best reputation as a cast member in terms of like competitively speaking. And she kind of even herself said that like she was checked out of the show at this point in time, and she was clearly just making deals and helping out Kenny and Evan and the champs team by just kind of honestly sandbagging the challenges and like helping them win. So I think replacing her with Paula would definitely help. I went back and forth about leaving Brie on because obviously we saw Brie had, a really competitive elimination with Susie, almost actually beat her. But I feel like replacing her with Brittany from Duel 2 was kind of my headspace on this one. Brittany was one of like the greatest. She's right up there with Heather Cook for like the greatest like one and done challengers ever. Any other season that doesn't include Rachel Robinson, she pretty much wins in like her rookie season.
Yeah.
So that is who I replaced Brie with. And then for this last one, replacing Siobhan was tough because I went back and forth on this one a lot because my heart wanted to put Jen Grijalva as that last spot, but I try to put on the lens of like 2009, and Anissa, like you said earlier, had aura back then. She just had this reputation, at least at that time, of being like an elimination beast and not to be like screwed with. So, and she obviously came off a final appearance on Duel 2. So I felt like that was like too hard to pass up. Had you asked me this question around the time of like Cutthroat and we were running this format, I probably honestly side with Jen just because like I think Jen was given a little bit more at that time period. But yes, those are my girls though. I keep Kellyanne, Sarah, Diem, and Kimberly, and then like the last three are Paula, Brittany, and Anissa. And I feel like instantly that's an upgrade, at least from a competitive standpoint.
Totally, yeah. I mean, I think Paula back in 2009 is kind of in like the same camp as Diem competitively, in the fact that I think like eliminations aren't necessarily her thing, but you get her to the final, she's gonna run. Like she's gonna get through the whole thing. Like Paula had done finals at that point, and she pushed hard. Like she was no joke. So I think that I probably should have put her on there. She's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, I get why you left her off though, because I mean, her and I mean that's a good point. Her and Diem essentially had the same skill set. Obviously, vastly different archetypes, but like definitely the same skill set.
I think I wanted to be respectful of the fact that Kimberly was there with Dunbar, and my heart's with Dunbar. Didn't want things to get too
complicated. Didn't want any conflict of interest,
Absolutely, yeah. It seemed morally corrupt.
Right.
Yeah. Do you want me to dive into the men?
We could go like a snake rotation. So
go for it.
So I'll go with my men first, and then you can finish it off. So for the guys' side, this was a little bit dicey because obviously, if you know the events in real time back then, there was a pretty big fight that happened early on the first night, season prior. So when making this decision, it was really just like a flip of a coin type of snap decision. I think if anybody follows like the old, casting what if sites, they'll know and see that production definitely did toy with the idea of putting CT on this. So
I will say, without saying any names, I have heard directly from a cast member that CT, they wanted him on the cast, and people were like, no, we will walk. We will not do the show if CT is on the show. And I feel like that probably happened later into the casting cycle. Granted, this cast member could just be fucking with me, but I heard from someone who is a cast member that was a thing. And if that happened later, it kind of explains why the whole challengers team had a little bit to be desired, because CT would have been the muscle. He would have been. He would have
been an instant game changer.
Yeah, I mean, no one was going to mess with CT.
Yeah. So with that in mind, I keep Brad obviously because in real life, with what we got, he was like by far and away like the sort of best guy that they had. I keep Kahutta because, as we know, there was an active storyline going into that season anyway, where he was the ex of Kellyanne, and you obviously had Wes there, so that makes a ton of sense. I leave the incredibly charismatic Dunbar in the cast because without him, we lose you just dock that down by like entertainment-wise by like a lot if we just take Dunbar off. So I keep him there because you got Kimberly, and he's just a compliment beast. So I mean that's just his. But no, back to the original point here. So I replaced Danny, unfortunately, another one of my favorites, with CT because that just makes a lot of sense. I mean, Danny was friends with Wes, but competitively hadn't won an elimination at that point in his challenge career, and just kind of honestly was pretty tame on that season anyway. I mean, the only way I feel like Danny could have worked is if you had Melinda there, but obviously that wouldn't have been the case here. So I do replace Danny with CT, and that right there instantly is a huge game changer because the rest of that then shifts. Not only does it help the challengers potentially win daily challenges, but it forces the champs' hands in a sense where they can't just throw somebody in. They'll be hesitant and be like, oh well, somebody we're throwing in potentially against CT could go home. So there's that. This next one's actually really interesting for me because I interviewed this person and he said that he had a contract signed for this, and then they just pretty much tore it up without explanation right before they were about to depart. I'm replacing Nick with one of his short-lived, albeit technically roommates. Actually, no, they wouldn't have actually. They wouldn't have roomed, actually. Okay.
I know who you're going to say, and I don't think they live together, but I have the exact same thing written down.
Yeah, Greg Halstead is replacing Nick, because if anybody knows a thing or two about Real World Hollywood, it's probably one of the more underrated Real World seasons ever, because I think it gets swept under the rug because of the lack of challenge presence by their cast. But it was actually a really good season, I'll say. and Greg, I would go as far as to say, was kind of like, I mean, he was the antagonist by far on that show. But even just, if you just strip away the antics alone, competitively speaking, he's a big guy. Like, he could have been like a pretty good athlete. I mean, at least, you know, you would have at least run the risk of finding out. Whereas Nick, I mean, we saw him lose a physical elimination of Ryan Kehoe in the season prior. And yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I mean,
that just
these are facts.
Yeah. And then sticking with replacing with another roommate, I actually have Scott Herman replacing Chet. Not that, like, Chet was, I mean, he was there for an episode, but it's not like he, you know, again, this is kind of just kind of subjective. Chet went on to kind of have a decent season on Battle of the Seasons, obviously, and like showed some signs of life on Cutthroat. But I think, like, for this specific season, I feel like Scott Herman would have worked better.
That's a very funny way to describe his time on Cutthroat, because I distinctly remember he gets like a concussion at the end of the episode. They just show the screen flatlining like he's going to die. Like that's the edit that they give Chet.
And then they sent him home. They sent him home, and the entire team's like crying. Like they
sent him home the next episode.
Yeah,
but like, yeah, I mean, he did do well on Cutthroat. You're absolutely right, but like they tried to make it seem like he died.
Yeah, I mean, would have been nice to kind of use that as like maybe we shouldn't do this, and then not have Leroy almost die on Vendettas jumping off a car. But you know,
it takes a few times to get it right.
Yeah. And then for my last one, this was honestly a huge toss-up, because this is Adam King's spot. And, you know, normally this would seem on surface like a slam dunk decision, like, you know, CT's there, Adam, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to stick with the mindset of a morally sound human being with a compass here and not put Adam and CT with each other immediately after what happened on Duel 2. I think between the two, CT's the more desirable cast member to have back. I would wait to keep their first interaction with each other on Rivals 1, and that's where they meet years down the line again for the first time. So I don't have Adam on this season. So his replacement, honestly, is not really for any rhyme or reason. I kind of just went with somebody who I felt like competitively would have just been like able to kind of hold his own, and I just put Derek McRae as the last guy. I mean, he had like somewhat of a reputation as like a good athlete. I mean, like on Gauntlet 3, I mean, they pretty much kind of shoehorned him in as like the sort of alpha male presence on their team. And he made it, he made it really far or pretty far at least on Duel 2, didn't he? Like,
yeah, he was close to the end. He was like top 6 or something. Trying to remember if it was, he might have beat the elusive Big Easy.
Yeah, but he lost the climbing elimination Evan where he couldn't even get on the wall.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I've seen like some episodes somewhat recently of the Duel 2 and the Ruins on Pluto TV, so I'm like getting bits and pieces, but I'm not like watching the whole season. But yeah, he was kind of, Derek was, they built him up a lot on the Gauntlet 3 for sure.
Right, dude. So let me ask you this though: if Derek McRae by some chance ever popped up on a future All-Star season, would that be a casting announcement that would tickle your fancy the way Dario did, or is that?
Yeah, probably. I mean, it depends on who they play him with. I don't see any storyline that involves him on the show, but
yeah,
does that really matter anymore? They'll cast people from anything now.
I think he could work on like an individual All-Star season where he doesn't have. Yeah, like I don't know. I mean, we've seen other people who kind of just like similar archetypes like him just kind of resurface. So I feel like, you know, they could throw him a bone and put him on. I'm all for the randomness. So
yeah, I think the thing with him is he would actually be kind of competitive, and depending on what they're trying to do, that could work. I mean, just being competitive should be enough to get you an All-Stars. But apparently they have different standards there. So
I just remember it was like 4 summers ago during like the COVID summer.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't know what it was, but this was just like for weeks on end. There was this one Reddit user that just each week would submit like these fantasy who do you guys think would win polls on Reddit of like Hall Brawl matchups, and every single week it was a new person, but the one constant was just Derek McRae, and it was
because he always wins.
They were putting him up against people like Swaggy, Aesop, like Luke. It was so like random. It was almost like they were baiting everybody into picking him each week, but like, yeah, I don't know. I just thought it was funny. You want to know how funny I thought it? It prompted me to actually reach out. That was what got me to reach out to him for an interview. That's
Derek? Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't hate if he came back. Like I'm sure he's a nice guy.
No, yeah.
It's just like it doesn't seem like they want anything to do with Road Rules Viewers Revenge anymore. But
if they did,
I'm sure Tori could change their mind. Like Tori Hall.
Yeah.
She could change their mind.
I feel like she's one that they would put on if she said yes.
I think she recently had kids.
Yeah.
From what I've seen, so it's just kind of like I'm not really sure if she would do it or not, but she definitely seems like the type that would prioritize her family.
Yeah.
Fair enough. I mean, not everyone is in a position where they want to play trivia 50 feet in the air, but a lot of people are.
Well, I'll allow you to take the floor here and close out with rounding out your guys here. So
I actually have a lot of the same, replacing the exact same people. I said Scott would replace Chet. Unfortunately, I know at the time Scott was trying to be a model, which I think he was. Like he's rich. Like he was a model, but like that kind of prevented him.
He was doing like the whole fitness tutorials on YouTube back then. I think when YouTube was still like in its early days.
He's legit on YouTube. He has like
he like retired because of that. Like his like when you look at like if you're just like anybody who just like looks for like the basic 101s of fitness, if you just search in how to do something, his video is the first thing that pops up.
Yeah.
From like 12 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, whatever he was doing, he didn't do the ruins, but I wish he did because clearly that's the one from Real World Brooklyn. They wanted to do the challenge. Like, yeah, you look at that cast, you're not going to be like, I'll take Chet. They wanted Scott. I mean, that's just what it is. Chet had his moment. You're not wrong there, but they wanted Scott. I said Greg as well because even if he's not a strong competitor, I saw him on the Real World Hollywood. He brought the laughs. I'll take it. Sadly, I did replace Danny with CT. Danny, one of my all-time favorites. And I'm only half kidding there. I do like Danny.
He's a Real World legend.
Oh, yeah. I mean, when it comes to the Real World, he's probably top 10, like, most popular people from that show.
People don't realize, but there was a point in time where him and Melinda were adjacent to sort of, like, prime Jay-Z and Beyonce dynamic.
I don't know if I go that far, but, like, Heidi Montag and Spencer Pratt, like, that level, like, reality TV couples, they were up there. The only different swap I had on my cast was, and again, I'm going to go for like the deep cuts. I replaced Adam King because I think in a perfect world, Adam King is like fast and nimble and kind of clever in the game. And we see a little of that in the Gauntlet 3. But on the Ruins, Kahaya filled that role. He was like, he was able to outsmart Wes in the not elimination. He was like the runner the one time that the challengers won. So I replaced Adam with Letarian because, I mean, he had been away for a while, but I mean, if you are in a physical elimination, that is one guy you don't want to see. I mean, if you're in a puzzle, I don't think I've ever seen Letarian in a puzzle elimination. He did win like the puzzle challenge with Kendall on All-Stars 1, so he could be good. I just don't know. But I mean, I would imagine if Letarian was in the stand and Kenny, Evan, Doral, any of them are going down there, that's one guy they don't want to see. So he kind of would have been interesting because he has a relationship with Cyrus at the time from the Extreme Challenge. He's like the only Road Rules team that lost. So I think he'd be a fun addition.
I like it. I mean, I wonder, there's some, casting decisions on that season. Like, so a lot of them I do understand, and then some of them I'm like, all right, this is probably like a fallback option. One that I just never really understood was like, honestly, I don't even kind of understand the Duel 2 casting really either for this person, but especially the Ruins. What did they see in Nick?
I'm guessing, I mean, you kind of alluded to it. Your guess is as good as mine, but there's just not a lot of real world Hollywood presence, but it was a popular season at the time. So they kind of probably wanted to bring him onto the show. I mean, they cast people from the real world Hollywood on the island. They had Dave. And he left for a cheeseburger and Mountain Dew. So they couldn't bring him back.
Am I crazy to say that I feel like Dave could have, if he stuck it out on a normal season, showed some signs as a competitor?
No. I think that people are overly harsh on Dave for quitting the island when being on the island was the challenge. And we all kind of saw how it shook down at the end. Like they were just going to take his key. He wasn't going to row the boat at the end, so he was going to spend 4 weeks on an island fighting Evelyn for toilet paper. Like, no, he didn't make a bad choice. Sorry, maybe that's unpopular, but
you know what I really think they both the Duel 2 casting and the Ruins casting, maybe not so much Greg, like, the archetypes are different. I definitely feel like if Will accepted those calls, he likely would have probably been in the roles that Nick was afforded.
Yeah, I'm guessing Will didn't accept the calls. I think he was trying to be like a DJ at the time.
Yeah, because it was like, I think it was like a conflict because like he actually said when I interviewed him that like there was a few times where he did accept the calls, but there was going to be some conflict because he was DJing at the time, and like they pretty much, I think, said that he would have been like in violation of his contract because of like you see him in the back of McDonald's commercials, just like literally like background character, just like kind of like spinning a DJ track for like a McDonald's commercial. But from what I know, that actually was what kind of prohibited him from being on Battle of the Seasons 2012, because they actually got pretty close to getting a Hollywood season together. Unfortunately, Nick would have been there too as well, he said, but we can't escape Nick. But
I mean, you say unfortunate, I say fortunate.
Well, yes, but we would have gotten, from what I know, without getting too deep into things, because that'll probably come up in a future thing, but Nick, it would have been Nick and Will, and I think Kimberly and Brianna, I want to say. And like they were actually really convincing the girls to do it, and they would have likely done it just because it was like a seasons thing. But like because of that conflict with Will, like they pretty much were like, all right, whatever, it's not worth it. So
I don't know. I mean, I heard that Dunbar and Sydney was on that season, and I saw Dunbar in a different video around that time, and he was still allowed back. So who knows?
Oh yeah, that's true. I don't know. That's another person who, at this time frame, you got to remember that they had a lot of investment built up in Dunbar because they clearly saw something in him. He was on the island, obviously, and then like Duel 2, and they just kept kind of putting him on. And I feel like basically post Duel 2, we kind of got the same Dunbar for about 4 seasons in a row. I feel like it's safe to say, like Ruins. I mean, even Cutthroat when he won, and then you get X's and then Rivals too. I feel like Dunbar we knew what we were getting with Dunbar.
Yeah, but I don't know. I always thought that Will would have been a really interesting addition, if they could have gotten her to do Battle of the X's 1 with Janelle. I don't know if you remember on Real World Hollywood. Janelle just like crawls out of the woodworks and is dating Will for a minute. And that I just thought that was like a really kind of fun dynamic that they could have played on that season, but no such luck.
I feel like they probably tried for it at the very least.
Maybe. But if he wasn't going to get on Battle of the Seasons 2012 because he was eating at McDonald's or whatever, he wasn't going to get on 2011's Battle of the X's.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this was a ton of fun, so I'm glad we were able to do this. I mean,
oh yeah,
a lot more fun than a lot of the recaps I do. So I could put that feather in my cap. But you know,
absolutely. Anytime you wanna talk about just random shit that happened 10 years ago. I mean, listen, I was there. I remember these cast reveals.
Listen, there's a lot of meat left on this bone in terms of stuff that need to be dived into, I feel like. So definitely for sure. You know, I'll put this out, and I'm hoping that the people eat it up as much as we did. So
yeah. We'll see, and if not, I guess I'll just have to wait for another after show call.
Yeah, for Vendettas too.
I'm still waiting. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, take it easy.
Yeah, you too. Bye.